Number 1. Noise. The absolute worst babysitting experience I ever had happened when I was 17 years old. My friends and I babysat certain kids on a regular basis. I generally did not deviate from the families I would sit for. But there was this one occasion when I did. My dad told me that a friend of his needed to drive to the city for work and wouldn't be back until sometime the following day. He needed a babysitter to come and sleep over to babysit his 7-year-old son. My dad thought I'd be perfect for the job. It paid well, so I agreed. Now, upon meeting the guy and his kid, I first just thought the kid was terribly shy. He didn't talk at all when my dad introduced me to them. He just stared at me blankly. His father told me all the rules, and what to make for dinner and breakfast in the morning. He let me know he'd be back in the following afternoon. The kid's name was Joey, and things did not get any better with him as the night went along. I still thought he was just shy. He never really talked to me, and just looked like he was in a sour mood the whole time. I kept trying to engage him, trying to find out if there was something he wanted to watch on television. He didn't. I asked him if he wanted to eat dinner early. He didn't. Hell, whenever I asked him anything, he just looked at me and gave me this little shake of his head. I was so happy when it was finally time to put Joey to bed. He went to the bed without any argument or trouble. And afterwards, I decided to go into the living room to watch a little bit of television and do some homework. About an hour or so after I put Joey to bed, I heard some noises coming from the kitchen. I called out Joey's name to see if maybe he had gotten up and was in the kitchen. The noises stopped, but I did not get an answer. I called out again. When I didn't get an answer the second time, I got up off the couch. I walked into the kitchen and looked around. Joey wasn't in there, and neither was anyone else. I thought maybe I was just hearing things, and went back to my studying. Maybe about 45 minutes later, it happened again. I heard those noises coming from the kitchen. I called out Joey's name again. Once again, the noises stopped right when I called out his name, but I didn't get an answer. So once again, I called out again, and then got up and looked around in the kitchen. Again, neither Joey nor anyone else was in there. This time, I went up the stairs to check on Joey. His door was slightly ajar, and I remember leaving it like that. I looked in the room and Joey was in there. He was curled up under the blanket sleeping. I was on edge. They didn't have any pets. I checked all the doors to make sure they were locked. They were. I checked all the rooms of the house, under all of the beds, and in all the closets. Everything was empty. If someone had broken into the house, there would have been some indication of it, but there was none. I didn't hear any more noises while I was working. Finally, and pretty late, I decided to go into the guest room and try to get some rest. I got ready for bed, checked on Joey to make sure he was all right, and then got into bed. I was dozing off when something snapped me out of it. I didn't know what it was, so I just listened closely. My eyes looked over at the door of the room I was in, and I was scared to notice that it was wide open. I always leave doors slightly ajar. I heard a creaking sound, as if someone was walking across the floor to the bed. I reached over quickly to the lamp on the nightstand and switched the light on. There was Joey, standing a few feet from my bed, and holding a knife that he had gotten from the kitchen. I was scared, and yeah, the first thing that went through my mind was that the boy was trying to stab me or something. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me that there was a man under his bed, and he went and got the knife for protection. Terrified, I called the police. I kept Joey in the room with me until they arrived. They searched the house and didn't see anything. They got in contact with Joey's dad. It turned out this wasn't the first time this had happened. Joey had several times walked into his dad's room with a knife because he thought that someone was in his room. I don't know, it's weird. If no one was in the house, then it had to be Joey that I heard in the kitchen, right? And if it was Joey, then why did he go back to bed and pretend to be asleep when I called his name? If he thought someone was under his bed, it didn't add up. I can tell you, though, that I never went back to that house.
Number 2. Paranoia. I once had a babysitting job for a wonderful family when I was 15 years old. It was great because I loved the 2 children and the parents paid me well. However, after a year of working for them, I had to quit. I actually never had a babysitting job ever again. The parents had a party to go to and they were going to be there pretty late. So they called me up and asked if I could be there overnight. They had a guest room and I slept in there before. I liked it because it would be a lot of money. I still remember everything that happened really well. I put the kids to bed and then I turned all the lights out in the house. I turned on the TV and I decided I would watch every scary movie. I chose Scream. I settled in and covered myself up with a blanket. About halfway through the movie, I began feeling very uneasy. I couldn't even tell you why. I chalked it up to the fact that the movie was scary, but as the minutes ticked by, I felt every more and more uneasy. I remembered that babysitting urban legend, and I decided it would be a good idea to check the children. Maybe I was instinctively feeling something was wrong, but I checked on both of them, and they were sleeping very soundly. I went and laid back down on the couch in order to finish my movie, but the moment I was back on the couch, I immediately felt paranoid again. It was the feeling of being watched. However, when you're essentially home alone, the feeling of being watched wasn't something you could do anything about. I didn't think I could get off the couch and then go check the window. If someone was watching me from one of the windows, I would have been more scared to know that they were. So I pulled my feet up on the couch and just tried to get it off my mind. Towards the very end of the movie, I heard a very strange noise outside in the front yard. I jumped off the couch. I went over to the hallway and I turned on both the living room light and the porch light. Then I slowly went over to the window and looked out on the porch. There was no one there. However, I did see someone outside. Someone was walking along the sidewalk. It was only a bit after 10 p.m., and that was not so unusual. So I figured maybe the guy made a noise, and I went back to the couch. However, I left the porch light on. I'm not sure when I fell asleep, but I will never forget when I woke up. The dad was standing before me at the couch. He looked very worried, and he was holding some sort of wire in his hand. He began asking me questions, checking to see if I was all right and if anything had happened. Were the kids okay? The mom then came down the stairs and told her husband the children were fine, and she called the police. I began to panic a bit, and he tried to calm me down. However, when he told me that they had been concerned when they drove up and saw the lights on so late, upon reaching the front door, they found something stuck in the doorknob. My heart turned to ice when he told me it was a mechanism used for picking a lock. I had never been so frightened in my life. While I was there watching a movie, someone was trying to break into the house. The police figured me turning on the lights probably scared the guy off. The reason I felt I was being watched was because I was being watched. I thought the guy outside walking, and I always wondered if that was him.
Number 3. The Old Woman. Okay, I don't even know how to tell this story. It happened when I was 16 years old, and I used to babysit for a family across town. There were 3 kids, and I was over at their house every single Friday. I loved it. The kids were wonderful. But the youngest kid, a girl named Becky, out of nowhere began getting very strange. I guess I should tell you about the night this happened. I was getting the money from the parents. They always paid for pizza on Friday. Becky was all right at first. But as the night went on and on, she got very quiet. I kept trying to get her involved in things, but she was just upset about something. I felt really bad about not being able to get her to do anything. When it was time to put her to bed, Becky was resistant. When I asked her what had been bothering her, she shook her head frantically and told me that she wasn't supposed to talk about it. I asked her why not, and she told me that the old woman told her not to mention it to anyone. I was confused, but I was able to coax it out of her. Becky was convinced that some old woman lived in their house. Her parents didn't know about it. The old woman hid until it was bedtime, and then she went around the house. Becky had seen her once, and that was when the woman told Becky that she was a witch, and that she had better not tell her parents. Sometimes, the woman would open up her bedroom door and peek in. I had experiences like this when I was young too. I just let her know that I was in the house, and she didn't have to worry about the old woman. As long as I was there, nothing bad would happen. And Becky seemed a little bit doubtful, but she also relaxed a bit after that. We had a pretty okay night from then on. I put the kids to bed, and stayed up for a couple hours afterwards to have some me time. Every half hour or so, I would go back and check in the rooms to make sure the kids were all in bed and sleeping. Everything was all right. I was watching a movie when I heard a crashing sound in the basement. It sounded like a jar shattering. I got up and walked over to the basement, and then I remembered Becky talking about the old woman. Now, I really didn't believe that an old woman was anything but Becky's imagination, but sometimes you never really know. I was on edge immediately. I went into the kitchen and grabbed a chef's knife. Then I slowly went over to the basement and opened the door. I turned on the light and called out, "I have a knife." I got no reply. I then crept down the stairs. Looking around, I noticed that there was a glass jar busted on the floor, but also, I saw the basement door was wide open. This was a door that went to the outside. I went over to the door to close it, and I saw that the lock on the door was broken. There was no one in the basement at all, but someone definitely had been there only moments ago. I called the parents and called the police. Eventually, a woman was arrested. She wasn't really old, maybe in her 40s, but she had broken into the house several times. The family had jarred food in the basement, so she had been breaking in and taking it, and sometimes coming and getting things out of the kitchen. Well, I'm sure she was fed much better in jail. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. First, thanks to AgentShadowWolf for this collaboration. There will be a video on his channel for the second half of the collaboration, and that will be linked here and in the description. I will also include a link to subscribe to his channel, so make sure to do that. I want to thank everyone who has bought Killer Orange Cat merchandise. I think it's really neat that people would actually want to pay to have my channel on a t-shirt or sticker. It's kind of unbelievable, but quite flattering too. I've included the links here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider subscribing by hitting the button below, or waiting for the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave a comment or share the video with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. The only requirement I have is that it must be original, meaning it has not been read on any other YouTube channel. In the meantime, please don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.